Thanks for stopping by the obviously Lee Authentic channel. My name's Leah, that's spelled L-E-A and not L-E-A-H. And you are tapped into Oh Have Y'all Seen? And we're going to be discussing the newest Netflix documentary, Crime Scenes, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel. So if you see me looking down, y'all know what it is. It's the notes. I got to make sure I get these names right and that I hit certain points that I definitely want to talk about so we can have a good discussion in the comments below. This is the first episode. The first episode is episode 1, Lost in Los Angeles. So when this first opened up, I immediately thought of American Horror Story. And I'm from the South. I am not from the West Coast. So I've only been to Los Angeles once. And well, not even Los Angeles. It was San Diego. I've only been to California once, and it was to San Diego. So I've never been to LA. But American Horror Story is one of my favorite TV series. And when I saw this, I immediately thought of American Story Hotel. So it was very cool and interesting to realize this is probably where Ryan Murphy got his idea to create American Horror Story Hotel for that season, because of the history and the backstory. Because if you have seen that season, the backstory is basically the same, just with Ryan Murphy's twist on it. So the one thing I mentioned is, like, everyone kept saying the Cecil Hotel was, like, beautiful. And I was like, them pictures look generic and it looks dirty. I don't like it. Should look basic. But that just could be me. It could be me. You know, I've been told I got champagne taste on a beer budget from my family. But I legit was like, I don't know what y'all see in this hotel. But again, if you see me looking down, it's my notes, so we can make sure we stay on task and I hit the points we need to hit. So it opens up and it's 2012 and they are in Vancouver, Canada. And we actually have like a reenactment of a young lady playing Miss Elise Lamb as she's typing on Tumblr. And I was like, wow, Tumblr, I remember all the drama Tumblr used to create at my high school. So like when they said it, I said, ooh. Girl, and they said she was basically using Tumblr like her diary. And I was like, wow. I did note that she said something that like kind of struck me as odd when she was like, the internet doesn't have consequences. And then and she was like, it's cheaper than therapy. And it made me think about how naive we were back in the day, especially around her age. I was younger than her around that time, but it just made me realize how naive we were. I remember like us thinking like you could, anytime you deleted a picture off the internet, it was gone. And now it's like, you know, my dad works in IT. I've learned that like, and they tell you now, whatever you put on the internet is always there. There's no way to get rid of it. So be very cautious and selective of what you put there. But just thinking about like the early 2000s and the early 10s, we really didn't have that concept. So when she said that, I was like, yes, that's naive. But like back then, that's how we all thought. I mean, I never put anything on the internet like during that time that I wouldn't be like, if I saw it today, I'd just be like, there's some embarrassing pictures where I was like, ooh, I thought I was bad and I wasn't. My hair was flicked. But I remember posting people's nudes. People would post their nudes on the internet. I remember fights would be posted, like high school fights. So, you know, you never think about that stuff when you're younger. But she seemed like a very, like, cool person in the sense of, like, just normal and, like, trying to figure out her life and all the different things, like the highs and lows. Like, she was about to go to college for, I think, the first time. And she was, like, having uneasiness about that, which I was like, that's totally understandable. Like she said, people think you go to college and you're just supposed to have your life figured out. And it's like, no, but you feel like you should, because society has broadcasted to us that like when you get to college, everything just hits and you just automatically know what you want to do. And it's like you get there, you are like, what in the FUCK is going on here? So She wanted to take a West Coast trip, I guess traveling through the different cities of California before she started school. We ended up finding out that she is a first generation immigrant. So she probably had a lot of pressure put on her. I have a few friends that are first generation immigrants, and their parents love them, but their parents don't understand that, like, the pressure they put on them for them to achieve great success in academia. But I also understand, like, where people's parents come from. They don't have the same educational opportunities that we do have here in America or in other countries like Canada, like England, or things like that. So they just want their kids to have that opportunity, and when they give them their opportunity, they want them to run with it. And also in other countries, knowledge is power. So academics is really what gives people sometimes status where they come from. So I think that's why parents or who are immigrants instill that so much, because I've learned that from my friends. Like, I've had conversations with their parents and been like, why is it like that? And they've told us it's like where they're from, you don't get these opportunities. So they just want their kids to take the opportunities that they've been given, with them being lucky, or, you know, having the opportunity to be blessed to live in America, to like run with it. So I think she just wanted to take a trip to, like, you know, take a deep breath, like enjoy herself before she decided to dive fully into school. So we end up finding out that Elise went missing February the 1st, 2013. And the last time her family heard from her was January the 31st, 2013. And then we're introduced to Detective Tim and Detective Greg. I'm not going to say their last names because I'm probably going to butcher it. But basically, there were 18 detectives that were assigned to this case. And at first when I heard that, I was like, that's a lot of people just for one missing persons. Because I used to watch the first 38 missing. And normally it's maybe like 2 or 3 people helping. But I guess watching this episode and learning about the history of the Cecil Hotel, and also learning how big it is. It's 700 rooms. So like the Cecil Hotel is basically like a little town in itself. So they were probably like, yo, we need help. They definitely needed help. So we're introduced again to Officer Tim and Officer Greg, and they basically were like, they were trying to figure out, was Elise lost in Los Angeles, because she wasn't from America and she wasn't from LA, so she didn't know the area. Did she get hurt somewhere? Was she kidnapped, or worse, did someone like assault her, or did someone kill her? So we end up finding out that the Cecil Hotel's normal rate is $85 a night. And most guests are foreigners, because they probably don't know the history or anything like that about it. You just see $85 and it's in LA. You probably would take it knowing that LA prices are out the butt for no reason. And we are introduced to Miss Amy Price, who I find to be creepy and weird. That lady gives me evil anime character. And as you can see, we love anime over here, right here. Sis gives me like, I done help people cover up crime scenes, or I done killed somebody and got rid of their body. I don't know. When they started talking about the history about the Cecil Hotel and her responses, I don't know why it just made me uncomfortable. Like, I was like, something about you, lady. I got my good eye on Miss Amy Price. But she was the manager of the Cecil Hotel from 2007 to 2017. She called it her kingdom. And when she called the place her kingdom, I was like, oh, you were probably an ass as a boss. Because anytime someone calls like their job their kingdom, they're normally a dick at work. So you probably was a dick at the work. And she even said it was like a kingdom in a zoo. And she said you never knew what was going to happen. That's another thing. I would not work somewhere for 10 years. The way my anxiety is set up, where I don't know what I'm going to be dealing with from day to day. Like, I need consistency, and I need to be able to go to work, do what I got to do, and bring my behind home and be straight. But we end up finding out that Elise checked into the Cecil Hotel January the 28th. And she checked into a female bunk room. They had community toilets. That would have been the first thing for me to be like, I'm moving out. And for me, because I ain't sharing no bathroom with people I don't know. And I'm obviously not sleeping in a room with people I don't know. I don't know how people stay in hostels. Honestly, you know what? That movie Hostel messed me up. I know I'm not saying, I think it's Hostels. That movie that they had, that they I don't know when that came out. I know it was like the early or late 2000s, scared the crap out of me, because I have friends who stay in hostels when they travel overseas, and I'm like, yo, I will save my money to stay in a hotel where I have my own bathroom, but I can lock the door and I don't have to deal with someone possibly kidnapping me and put me in murder games. So no thank you. Leah Good. So basically, she didn't check out on February the 1st. They ended up, because that was her day that she was supposed to check out. So the day she actually went missing, or was reported missing, was February the 1st, 2013, the day that she was supposed to check out. And I learned something new, that, like, I guess when people leave their stuff at hotels, they bag up your stuff and they keep it for 30 days. And the manager, Miss Price, basically said, or the firm manager, said that you would be surprised what people leave when they come to the hotel. She was like, people have left snakes, like really important documents. We keep it for 30 days and then we discard it or give it to, like, I guess the work staff. But we ended up finding out that she left her meds, her laptop, her clothes, and her wallet. When they said meds with an S, I was like, something might be up, because they didn't specify like what type of meds. Were they anxiety medication? Was it depression? Was it like schizophrenia medication? Or like, did she have allergies? Yeah, like, did she have allergies? Did she have like a rash? Like, they didn't really specify what type of medication it is. So hopefully, as I continue to watch, they explain what her medication is. But she left everything. Like, she left her clothes, her laptop, her wallet. Red flag is your laptop, because nobody leaves their Mac laptop. No, nobody does. But they said there was no evidence that any foul play had came. Like, there was no drug residue. There's like she was drugged or she was doing drugs. There was no evidence that someone forced their way into her room. So it's the LAPD was struggling, because they were like, they didn't have any leads to truly go on. So as they continue, they basically we end up in the UK, at Plymouth, UK. So it's this couple called Mike and Sabrina. I'm not even gonna say their last name, because I think it's Baga. I hope I said that right. But we're just gonna Mike and Sabrina. So basically, Mike and Sabrina decided they were guests at the Cecil Hotel, and they wanted to go to LA. Basically, they had a rose-colored glasses on what they thought LA would be about, but they booked the Cecil Hotel without reading reviews. They said it didn't have reviews, but it had a great price. That was red flag number one. Anytime they have good rates, but there is no reviews, should let y'all know something is wrong. Like, something is big wrong. So there was red flags. They said when they got to the Cecil Hotel, like, their room was dusty, it was dirty, the floor was sticky, and they said they just were going to deal with it because they got it for a good price. I would have called the next Holiday Inn, Marriott, Hyatt, Candlewood, what a shoot. I even would have stayed at the Best Western, and I do not do motels, but I would have stayed at a Best Western before I stayed at the Cecil Hotel. When you walk into a room and the floors are sticky, that means that place was nasty. Like, do you know how hard you got to get the floor to be sticky? That means y'all ain't really cleaning that place, which is nasty. But they were kind of shocked because they actually ended up on Skid Row. And we all know what Skid Row is. And if you don't know what Skid Row is, it's basically where most of the LA, like, homeless population is. It's like a dumping ground for, like, people out of prison or people with mental illnesses just go and stay. And it's right outside the Cecil Hotel. So that's probably why they didn't have reviews. Then we meet Santiago Lopez, who is who was one of the workers at the Cecil Hotel. So I think he was either like maintenance or helping with janitorial work, because they said he had keys to open up the doors. But he basically said that she was a college student. She had her books she would read and things of that nature. Nothing out of the ordinary. So they go back and they basically said like her Tumblr was like her diary or her itinerary. Like, honestly, she posted too much information on her stuff. But like I said, we were naive back then. Like, if I could go back and look at what people post on Facebook now versus then, it's technically the same, but people be giving too much information on Facebook. So, but they said they were able to use her Tumblr as an itinerary to figure out what she was doing. Because she would talk about like the people she met, like where she was going, the next places. And I guess it was her way to talk to somebody. Maybe she felt like in her family, she didn't have anyone to really communicate or talk to, which is kind of sad. Not kind of, it is sad. But like, when your parents are first generation, sometimes they're not the most emotional people, and it seems like Elise like had a lot of emotions and uneasiness about her life that maybe could have been helped with just talking to somebody or things of that nature. But we know we all know minority people feel like therapy is like, that's not for us. But I'm glad we're getting away from that because we all need therapy. But we ended up finding out like on the day, I guess the day before she went missing, she went to a bookstore, and I think it looked like a Barnes and Nobles, a really nice Barnes and Nobles. But they said she seemed sweet. She was talking about buying a book that she wanted to know, would it be heavy with her traveling. I don't think I mentioned, but she was basically traveling by herself. She convinced her parents to allow her to go on this West Coast tour by herself. So she was alone, which I commend her, because I know people. I actually follow someone who like, she's a travel blogger on Instagram and she travels alone, and I was like, I don't know how that would be. Like, I don't know. I've been on like vacations by myself where like I've taken like, a 2-day, 3-day, but it hasn't been like out of the country. It's been like, maybe to the beach by myself or something like that. Or like, you just go get a hotel room and you just kick it. But I've never been out of the country by myself. So I wonder how that was for her. We then end up getting the history of the Cecil Hotel, which I enjoyed because I like learning. Like, history was my favorite subject. We meet Richard, I think it's Scanson. I hope I'm saying his name right. But he is a LA historian. And basically he explains that like the Cecil, I guess, was like built during its prime of LA. Like, Los Angeles was seen as the Mecca because, you got old Hollywood and things of that nature. The Cecil cost $1 million. So, back in the day, that was a lot. And it opened 1924. And basically, and I even looking at my notes, I said the manager is weird. Because she said that, like, the way she said, the Cecil had good bones. It was kind of like, ew, ma'am. I don't know. Miss Price is kind of weird. But we all know in the 20s, the Great Depression happened. So the Cecil Hotel was like on its last leg, basically, in the early 1930s because of the Depression. The pictures that they showed of the Cecil Hotel when it was first opened honestly reminded me of the Titanic. Like, these grand halls with these beautiful rooms and tables where, dancing is going around and things of that nature. Like, Great Gatsby and the Titanic mixed together. So, because of the Great Depression, and like in the early 90s, it was on its last leg, the Cecil became like an area for old men to like come and stay and to pay as little as money as they could to stay. Because we all know during the Great Depression, a lot of people were out down on their luck, were thrown to the wolves, basically, because the economy was in the tanker. And most people didn't have jobs to take care of themselves. So they were really just looking for places to live, to stay, basically rent-free. So the Cecil became that place. I don't know if I mentioned before, but the Cecil had 700 rooms. So that's 700 rooms that people could stay in rent-free. But it wasn't free rent. It's just basically they just got it at a discounted rate. So then we end up meeting Kenneth Givens, who was a former Cecil Hotel residents. So we end up, like I said, the Cecil becomes like a place for people who can't get like background checks for apartments, who don't want people to know where they are. Mr. Kenneth basically said like he lost his job in the 80s. And all I could think about was the crack epidemic. But he lost his job in the 80s while he was living in New York, and he just hit the road and he ended up on Skid Row, where the Cecil Hotel is. And he was basically on the streets for 21 years. He even said he wasn't an angel, so I'm thinking like, the crack epidemic, like he was probably addicted to drugs or selling drugs and things of that nature for him to be on Skid Row for 21 years. But he basically said that the Cecil Hotel was basically like a salacious hotel. Like he was like, people were there to have sex, get high, just do whatever. It was just like a free for all. And he said the nights was the craziest. So then we end up seeing a press conference with Miss Elise's family. And I hate press conferences that they do with victims' family. Like, if they don't want to be filmed, then why put them on TV? Like, the family didn't say anything, but you could visibly see, like, her sister was upset. The mom looked sad and worried, and the dad just looked lost and somber. And I don't know if that was like to appeal. It was to appeal to the public, but I was just like, I don't know. I normally feel like those types of conferences are, I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard of them working. Like if someone gets kidnapped, seeing a sad family would get them to like give their kids back. And maybe that has helped, and that's why they do it. But I don't ever remember seeing that. So, next, we meet Mr. Jimmy, who is also an LAPD detective. And he basically said that the Cecil Hotel is basically on, like I said, Skid Row. But Skid Row is ground zero for dangerous situation. They said Skid Row is one of the dangerous, I don't even think dangerous is a word. One of the most dangerous places in America. So he said for Elise to be staying at the Cecil Hotel and not knowing that, she probably was very like, she was out of her league. Like, like you come from Canada, you're coming from the suburbs, you don't know what goes around here. But then we were introduced, like, I thought this was the most interesting part, learning about Skid Row. So if I'm looking down, it's just me looking at my notes because I want to talk about it. So I've always heard about Skid Row, but I never knew like the history. And we end up meeting Dr. Doug McGigan. And Dr. Doug basically, I guess he is a historian for Skid Row. So he knows about the history and the lineage of Skid Row. He basically says Skid Row started 100 years ago. And basically Skid Row has 8,000 to 10,000 homeless individuals that live there, and most of them are either dealing with substance abuse or mental illness. They basically use Skid Row as a dumping ground for people once they get out of jail or the mental facilities. And Skid Row, I always thought Skid Row was just what's it called? Just a block, but it's not. It's 56 blocks of downtown Los Angeles, which I was like, wow. Like that's basically like a little small town. So that's why it houses so many people. And basically, they talked about how Skid Row came to be. So in the 1970s, the city decided to create the plan, the policy of containment. So basically, the police being assholes are like a barrier for Skid Row. Like, they basically police the people who go in and out of Skid Row. And Skid Row is the Wild Wild West. It's a free for all for all the debauchery and things like that. Like people, and like Dr. Doug said, it's just suffering is just allowed. Like it doesn't. And they also said that Skid Row is where all the missions and shelters are. So it's like help is there, but when you have a population of 8 to 10,000 people, that's a small college of people to deal with, to help on a regular basis. And some people, like the stories that they were telling in this first episode, like one officer said he saw a guy bite off the head of a pigeon. Another person said people have been killed for just walking down the street because someone was like having an episode who had mental illness, and they were raging. They also made mention that you could see somebody running down the street butt naked with a machete. So I'm like, it's just a free-for-all. Like when Dr. Doug said it's the Wild Wild West. Side note, Dr. Doug is cute. So if you see this, I think you are a very attractive black man. Just to let you know, sir. He just said it was like the Wild Wild West. It's a free-for-all. And I think that's crazy that we have that. And he also said Skid Row is one of the most poorest areas in the world. To think that they say America is one of the richest countries, or if not the richest country in the world, and we have an area that is a part of the most poorest in the world is sad. Like, we need to be doing distributing resources to those people. Because some people like being homeless. Like, I've seen documentaries where some people say, like, they don't want no parts of society. They like living off the grid and being homeless. And then there's those who don't want to be homeless, who want to get on their feet, who want to create a better life for themselves. And I feel like we should be providing them way better opportunities. Especially finding out that people from the mental institution just be dropped there. That's messed up. Because no one asked to be mentally ill. And like no one asked to not know what's going on, or like be able to differentiate reality from what's real. Like that to me, like when he was speaking about that, I felt so bad for those people. So then we end up finding out that the Cecil Hotel has cameras, but it's not on every floor. And the floor that Elise was on did not have cameras per se. Like it didn't have any cameras. But the officers went through hundreds of hours of videos for 20 hours a day. They would look at videos, and then they end up seeing a video of her in the infamous video of her in the actual elevator that I actually remember seeing like on the TV, like when they were showcasing it. So it was her final hours, and what they realized is she never left the hotel. So then they went through majority of the rooms, but they didn't find her. They even had the sniffing, like the dogs that can sniff out the scent, and they lost the trail because they were like, well, they really didn't lose the trail. They found out that the dogs smelled outside the window, and there was like a fire escape, and then they went on the roof, but they lost the trail on the roof. So then they decided, you know what, we're going to regroup and things of that nature. But when they tried to regroup, the next day is when they had that whole thing with I wrote down his name too, Christopher Dunner. And I remember watching this on TV too, where he was a cop that killed another cop. And he was basically saying he was going to keep killing cops basically until they killed him. So because of that, he worked for the LAPD. The team that they had that was 18 detectives went down to 4 detectives. So they were kind of starting all over with trying to find Miss Elise. But then they asked for the public's help. And this had been, when they asked for the public's help, it had been 13 days. And like that one officer said, basically after 2 weeks, you normally suspect the person has passed. And I remember when I was watching 48 Hours Missing Persons, that's what they always said. If they can't find you in the first 48 hours, the trail goes cold, and it normally means the worst. It doesn't always mean that someone has succumbed to death, but it normally is an indication that that's what happened. Excuse me. So then we meet a YouTuber named John, I think it's Lorden, and basically he was breaking down the different things that they saw about the video. So the detectives decided to post the final minutes of Elise's life in the elevator on the video. And honestly, y'all, it was a lot going on in that video. I get how people can have like conspiracy theories about the videos, especially people who believe in the supernatural. Cause like John said, it was like she walks into the elevator. She presses all the buttons, which is weird because normally people don't press all the buttons. Then she goes into the corner of the elevator and she stands there and she seems calm, but then all of a sudden it seems like she got distressed, and she looks out the elevator door, and the elevator door never closed. And we know, like, normally, if you do know, normally when you go into an elevator, after maybe like 10 or 15 seconds, it closes unless you press the button. So maybe it was broke, I don't know. But she looks through, pokes her head out, and then she walks back in and like tucks herself into the corner of the elevator where you can press the buttons. And then she pokes her head out again, and then she starts doing weird things with her hands, and like it seems like she's talking to someone, or maybe she's just having a moment. And then she steps back in the elevator, presses the buttons again, and then she kind of like, it was weird. It was kind of like nothing happened. Like the doors wouldn't close. And then the moment she steps out and she's gone, because they made mention that at the 2-minute and 30-second mark, you don't see her anymore. And then at the 3-minute mark, the doors close. So it's like, was it broke? Was someone operating the elevator or something? So like the journalist says, because we were introduced to a journalist. I think his name was like John, because I wrote down his name too, y'all. Like I was trying to make sure I kept up with these names, because it was a lot of names. John Dean. He was a journalist, and he basically was like, the LAPD didn't know that they caused people to have conspiracy theories or have people dive into this mystery once they uploaded the video. And like it seemed like the LAPD had good intentions. Like they were just trying to get more information, because the case was going cold. Like they end up seeing her on the surveillance videos, but you don't see her leaving. They checked all the rooms basically at this 700 room hotel, and they didn't find her. They got the dogs in there to sniff out her scent. They smelled her. They point out a window. They just go on a fire escape. They decide to go upstairs and comb the roof, and they don't find anything there. So they really released the video for help, but in that, it kind of made, there's conspiracy theories. And like with the internet is a blessing and a curse. So then you always have people creating their own stories or their own narrative, and it skews the way the case is supposed to go. But I'm definitely interested in understanding and learning more about this. I think this first episode was really good. I learned a lot about the Cecil Hotel, how it's connected to American Horror Story for myself and its history. And then Dr. Doug explaining about Skid Row, because you always hear about Skid Row, but I've never dived into understanding what kind of world they live in and those people who are affected by it. So I'm excited. So, that's it. That's all. Come back for part 2. Definitely get in the comments below so we can talk about it. I've been talking for 30 minutes, more than 30 minutes, but thanks for stopping by. You know what? Be bravely authentic. Have a good day, a good weekend. Encourage yourself. Just have a good day. That's all I want for everybody. To have a good day and be happy and positive. So, deuces, y'all.